They called her Hollywood's Golden Girl throughout the 1990s and early 2000s, a woman whose dazzling smile and infectious laugh could steal every scene she stepped into. Cameron Diaz wasn't simply another beautiful actress. She possessed a rare charisma that made audiences fall in love with every character she portrayed, effortlessly blending irresistible charm, sharp comedy, and genuine emotional depth. Studios were willing to pay her $20 million per film because they knew she wasn't just starring in movies, she was selling them. Even the most predictable romantic comedies became unforgettable blockbusters with her name attached. For more than 15 remarkable years, Diaz stood at the very top of Hollywood, dominating the worldwide box office, appearing on countless magazine covers, and earning her place among the highest-paid actresses of her generation. Then, bam, at 42 years old, she just peaced out. No grand farewell tour, no dramatic press conference, just quiet as a mouse, totally on her own terms. And trust us, the truth about what happened behind closed doors is way deeper than anyone imagined. Today, we're going to unearth the real reason why one of the biggest stars on the planet decided to completely walk away and trade the red carpet for total anonymity. Long before she became a household name, Cameron Michelle Diaz popped into the world on August 30th, 1972, in San Diego, California. She was raised by a blue-collar crew that never, in their wildest dreams, thought their kid would hit the absolute jackpot in Tinseltown. Her father worked for an oil company, her mother was an import-export agent, and Cameron grew up with a gritty, nose-to-the-grindstone work ethic ingrained deep in her DNA. She was just a skinny girl who liked heavy metal, surfed, and hung out with Snoop Dogg at Long Beach Polytechnic High School before anyone even knew his name. But she didn't get into Hollywood through the front door. She stumbled into fame through the side door. At just 16, she signed a major modeling contract, traveling the world entirely on her own from Japan to Paris. It was a trial by fire, learning how to handle herself in rooms full of powerful adults. She was grinding, living out of suitcases, and mastering the hustle before she ever learned a single line of dialogue. And then, the lottery ticket arrived, transforming Hollywood history overnight. By 1994, the casting for The Fast had turned into an absolute battlefield. The studio executives didn't want a rookie. They were dead set on Anna Nicole Smith, the ultimate blonde bombshell of the era, to play the seductive Tina Carlisle. Cameron Diaz was a complete unknown, a 21-year-old catalog model with 0 acting credits and a painful stomach ulcer she developed just from the sheer agonizing stress of the audition process. That brutal audition dragged on for 12 grueling rounds. By all accounts, she had no business getting the part. But director Chuck Russell saw a spark that a standard resume simply couldn't capture. The moment she stepped onto the screen, soaking wet in that form-fitting red dress, shaking off the rain in the bank lobby, the debate ended instantly. It became the defining cinematic entrance of the decade. Against all odds, she didn't just survive sharing the screen with Jim Carrey's rubber-faced, chaotic tornado of an acting style. She tamed it. She brought a sizzling jazz club allure mixed with a girl-next-door warmth that was impossible to fake. The film exploded, grossing over $351 million worldwide. To put that into perspective, that number was absolutely unheard of for a comedy at the time, shattering expectations like a box office earthquake. Overnight, Cameron went from an anonymous model to the face on every teenager's wall from London to Los Angeles. Critics who had sharpened their knives for the model-turned-actress were forced to drop them. She wasn't just scenery. She was the lightning rod that grounded the movie's chaotic energy, proving that sometimes the biggest gamble pays out the biggest jackpot. But plenty of people have one hit. Cameron proved she was playing the long game. She made a brilliant, calculated pivot, intentionally taking smaller roles in independent films to actually learn the craft, before landing the role that would cement her legacy in 1998. There's Something About Mary. This was the movie that made her America's sweetheart, but with a sharp, fearless edge. She played Mary Jensen, the ultimate dream girl who loves sports, drinks beer, and somehow remains totally oblivious to her own perfection. It was an incredibly risky role. Gross-out comedy is a total career minefield, but she navigated it with a fearlessness that stunned Hollywood. The infamous hair gel scene alone could have easily ended a lesser career. Instead, her ability to laugh at herself made audiences fall completely in love with her. She proved she wasn't just a pretty face. She was one of the guys. By the turn of the millennium, Cameron Diaz wasn't just a star. She was a one-woman stimulus package for the box office. Then came Charlie's Angels in 2000. It sounds like a sure thing now, but back then, Betting a massive $93 million on an all-female action movie was considered absolute financial suicide by studio elites. But Cameron didn't just show up to set. She underwent a brutal 3-month martial arts boot camp, training 8 hours a day under the legendary Yuan Chengyan, the wire-fu mastermind behind The Matrix. She did 95% of her own stunts, hanging from helicopters and bruising her way through fight scenes that left studio executives sweating bullets. The result? Natalie Cook, a character who could dance in Spider-Man underwear with infectious joy once a second and deliver a bone-crushing roundhouse kick the next. It was a cultural phenomenon that raked in a staggering $264 million worldwide, completely shattering the archaic Hollywood myth that men wouldn't pay to watch women fight. But the real earthquake happened behind the scenes. With the leverage from this massive hit, Cameron Diaz finally came clean with her demands, becoming the second actress in history right behind Julia Roberts to smash the elusive $20 million salary glass ceiling for the sequel. She wasn't just in the club, she owned the VIP section. She had forced the industry to pay up, proving that a woman's smile could be just as lethal and profitable as a loaded gun. Yet, just when the world thought they had Cameron Diaz figured out the bubbly blonde with the infectious laugh and the million-watt smile, she executed a career pivot so sharp it gave the entire industry whiplash. In 2001, she didn't just step out of her comfort zone, she set it completely on fire. Enter Vanilla Sky. Director Cameron Crowe wasn't looking for a typical glitzy movie star to play the obsessive Julie Gianni. He needed a raw nerve ending. On paper, putting Hollywood's favorite Mary girl opposite Tom Cruise in a dark, psychological thriller sounded like an absolute mismatch. But, trust us, the truth about what happened on that set explains everything. Cameron didn't just show up to cash a check, she stole the entire movie out from under her legendary co-star. There is one specific, terrifying sequence inside a moving car, the ultimate car ride from hell, where her character toggles between singing manic along to the radio and screaming in absolute, unhinged despair. It didn't feel like acting. It felt like a visceral public exorcism. She played the stalker not as a cartoon villain, but as a real woman completely flayed open by heartbreak. The critics who had spent a decade dismissing her as simple eye candy were suddenly scrambling to rewrite their reviews in total shock. She earned a well-deserved Golden Globe nomination, proving once and for all that beneath that sunshine exterior, she could tap into a psychological darkness that was genuinely scary. But behind the scenes, another chapter of her life was quietly unfolding, and she wasn't done proving her point to the industry elite. In 2002, she got the call that every actor simultaneously dreams of and absolutely dreads. Martin Scorsese, the master director, was casting Gangs of New York, a bloody, mud-soaked epic about 1863 Manhattan. He didn't need a sparkling rom-com queen. He needed a gritty, ruthless pickpocket who could survive the treacherous 5 points. The stakes were astronomical. Cameron wasn't just acting, she was stepping into the ring with Daniel Day-Lewis, a method actor so notoriously intense that he literally sharpened real knives between takes and refused to break character for months at a time. Most Hollywood starlets would have crumbled under that terrifying shadow. But Cameron didn't even blink. She dove straight into the historical grime, mastering a complex Irish brogue and bringing a feral, scrappy energy to Jenny Everdeen that completely silenced the skeptics. She stood toe-to-toe with Day-Lewis's terrifying Bill the Butcher, not as a helpless damsel, but as a fierce equal. It was a masterclass in cinematic survival. By the time the credits rolled, she had proven she wasn't just a happy meal for the box office. She was a gourmet talent who could swim with the apex predators of cinema without getting eaten alive. However, that gritty glory didn't last forever. By 2006, Cameron Diaz returned to the mainstream to give us a modern holiday ritual that has become as essential to December as eggnog. In Nancy Meyers' The Holiday, she didn't just play a character, she tapped into the collective anxiety of every high-powered woman who secretly fears she is completely unlovable. As Amanda Woods, a manic, high-strung movie trailer producer who physically cannot cry, Cameron delivered a performance that felt like a funhouse mirror of her own reality. A woman with a breathtaking career, a stunning wardrobe, and a completely empty house. And trust us, it wasn't just Hollywood fluff. It was high-stakes physical comedy with a real heartbeat. The famous scene where she runs back to the snowy cottage wasn't a cozy soundstage stroll. Cameron was sprinting at top speed in high-end luxury heels across uneven, freezing country terrain, doing take after exhausting take until her lungs burned. Why does this matter? because she was perfectly capturing the desperation of someone realizing they are about to lose the best thing they ever found. And the chemistry with Jude Law? It was pure electricity. She softened her legendary sharp edges, allowing audiences to see the ultimate cool girl finally drop her guard. We still watch it every single year, not just for the cozy English cottage aesthetics, but because we are rooting for the moment when the most successful woman in the room finally allows herself to break down and shed a single real tear. It was an absolute masterclass in making neuroticism charming and loneliness palpable. But while her professional career was breaking sound barriers, her personal life was being treated like a brutal, full-contact spectator sport. The media didn't just report on Cameron Diaz, they actively hunted her. We all saw the high school sweetheart vibe with Matt Dillon, and her intense, brooding engagement to Jared Leto, a relationship so fiercely private they barely even walked a red carpet together. But absolutely nothing could have prepared the public for the supernova that exploded in 2003. That was the year Cameron Diaz met Justin Timberlake. It wasn't just a standard celebrity relationship, it was a violent collision of two massive galaxies. He was the reigning prince of pop, fresh off the global NSYNC hysteria. She was the undisputed queen of the box office. Together, they were throwing high-octane gasoline directly onto a tabloid bonfire. But the narrative the media painted wasn't a fairy tale. It was steeped in a toxic, archaic sexism that seems downright baffling today. Instead of focusing on their obvious chemistry or their shared love of surfing, the press fixated with cruel precision on their 8-year age gap. Before the ink was even dry on the headlines, Cameron was labeled a cradle robber. Every single dinner date was analyzed by so-called insiders, and every facial expression was dissected for signs of an impending breakup. They lived their romance inside a terrifying pressure cooker, chased by aggressive paparazzi who would literally cut them off in dangerous traffic just to get a shot of them arguing. When the inevitable split happened in 2007, the public speculation was endless and aggressive. Yet, 4 years after that devastating heartbreak, she did something that shocked everyone. She signed on to star in Bad Teacher opposite her ex, Justin Timberlake. Think about the sheer guts that takes. Most people will cross the street just to avoid an awkward run-in with an ex-partner. Cameron Diaz agreed to shoot intense, raunchy comedy scenes with hers. There is one specific scene where she awkwardly dry humps him in a hotel room that is hilarious, uncomfortably real, and absolute comedic genius. It wasn't just acting, it was a masterclass in emotional compartmentalization. She proved to the world that she was vastly bigger than the gossip, refusing to let past personal drama derail a massive paycheck. But looking back, the truth about what happened during this era is way worse than anyone imagined. This relentless, invasive media circus didn't just break her heart, it thoroughly exhausted her soul. Being the perpetual cool girl who endlessly laughs off toxic rumors is exhausting work. The Justin era finally taught her a dark secret about the industry. In Hollywood, your real love life is just free content for someone else to sell. And then, just one realization was enough to turn everything upside down. It was this specific, deep-seated burnout, the crushing awareness that she couldn't even have a private argument without it ending up on TMZ, that quietly planted the seeds for her ultimate exit from Tinseltown. She started looking for an exit ramp, finally admitting to herself that she didn't want a life or a partner that belonged to the entire world. She wanted a partner who belonged only to her. The turning point was quiet, but it was absolute. By 2014, the Hollywood hamster wheel wasn't just spinnings anymore, it was grinding her bones to dust. And trust us, the breaking point arrived with a film ironically titled Sex Tape. On the surface, it looked like just another raunchy, high-grossing summer comedy. But behind the scenes, another chapter of her life was quietly unfolding, and it felt like a silent cry for help. Cameron was 42 years old, and a deeply rigid industry was still asking her to strip down and play the fun, naked girl. But the context had completely curdled. The press tour for that film turned into a brutal, forensic gauntlet. Intrusive reporters didn't care to ask about her craft or her decades of box office dominance. Instead, they fixated entirely on her aging body, dissecting her wrinkles and her figure with a microscopic cruelty that left her feeling exposed in a way no camera ever could. She later confessed to a profound sickness of the soul, a spiritual depletion far more dangerous than any physical ailment. She suddenly realized she couldn't tell where the human being ended and the global Cameron Diaz brand began. 2 decades of being treated like a public utility had left her suffering from an extreme existential exhaustion. In her own words, she felt completely owned. Every single aspect of her day, from what she ate to the exact hour she slept, was dictated by a rigid production schedule. She was breathing, but she absolutely wasn't living. The sex tape era wasn't a career high point. It was the terrifying moment she looked in the mirror and realized that if she didn't jump off the moving train right then, the machine was going to eat the very last piece of her humanity. She didn't leave just to retire. She left to survive. However, that dark vacuum of silence didn't last long. Life was about to deliver the ultimate behind-the-scenes plot twist, the exact kind that makes you believe in true Hollywood happy endings. Enter Benji Madden. On paper, it looked like a total glitch in the Matrix. She was the golden, sun-kissed, A-list queen of cinema. He was the heavily tattooed punk rocker from Good Charlotte. But that extreme friction is exactly why the spark caught fire. Benji wasn't looking for a flashy celebrity co-star to boost his public profile. He was looking for a real partner. He was grounded, fiercely protective, and completely uninterested in competing for the spotlight. He offered her the one thing the pretty boys of her past never could, a completely safe harbor. They married quietly in her living room in 2015. No swarming paparazzi helicopters, no massive corporate press releases, just pure, untouched intimacy. And with that ring, Cameron didn't just step back from the cameras. She built an absolute fortress of joy. She traded the chaotic red carpet for a stunning Dola 14 million farmhouse sanctuary in Montecito, completely surrounded by olive trees and blissful silence. She happily swapped movie scripts for complex cookbooks, even launching a clean, organic wine brand called Aveline that quickly became a massive commercial success on its own terms. Sitting on a staggering net worth estimated at well over Dola 140 million, she wasn't just wealthy, she was finally free to spend her time on a life that felt real. And then, just one event was enough to turn everything upside down and reveal the crown jewels of her entire existence. At 47 years old, she welcomed her daughter, Radix, into the world. The entertainment world gasped in shock, but Cameron just smiled. But what truly astonished the public was how deep her commitment to privacy went. In a move that proved just how fiercely peaceful her new life had become, she stunned the world again by announcing the birth of her son, Cardinal, at the age of 51. Think about the sheer scale of that achievement. She managed to pull off the ultimate unsolved mystery, raising a completely secret family right in the middle of modern California, completely undetected by the toxic tabloid machine. She had put off the role of motherhood for decades, waiting for a man who was genuinely worthy of the journey. And now, she isn't missing a single second of it. She is finally living the exact dream that every fictional character she ever played was chasing, waking up in a house overflowing with genuine love, uncorking a bottle of her own wine, and looking across the dinner table at a husband who sees the real woman, not the fading star. She didn't just survive Hollywood's golden era, she thoroughly beat the house. People still constantly ask why she walked away at the absolute peak of her powers. The truth about what happened is simple. She chose herself. In a ruthless town entirely built on bloated egos and the desperate, pathetic need for validation, Cameron Diaz performed the ultimate act of rebellion. She looked directly at the historic fame, the endless mountains of money, and the global adoration, and she boldly said, "This isn't enough." She realized that having it all meant absolutely nothing if you didn't have the time to look around and enjoy it. She didn't fade away because she aged out of the industry. She faded away because she actively opted out. Even the deep peace of Montecito was briefly rattled when the infamous Epstein files hit the public domain. The tabloids desperately tried to catch her name in the sensationalist crossfire, hoping to expose a single crack in the fortress she had spent a decade building. But it only proved that at 53 years old, Cameron Diaz is finally bulletproof. The internet tremor changed absolutely nothing. She is simply too full of things that actually matter to lose a single night of sleep over toxic background static. And yet, that deep, artistic itch to create hasn't totally vanished from her soul. We are finally seeing her step back into the frame, starring in high-profile projects like Back in Action, and booking a highly anticipated return to the iconic Shrek franchise as Princess Fiona. But let's be completely clear, it is entirely on her own terms now. The grueling, soul-crushing 12-month production grinds are officially dead and buried. She is doing it strictly for the creative joy, never out of financial requirement. Cameron Diaz did what very few people in Tinseltown ever have the raw guts to do. She walked away from the table while she was still winning. She traded the cinematic mask for a real face, and Hollywood's angels for a real family. In the end, she won the only prize that actually lasts her own life. Do you miss the box office superstar, or do you admire the woman who had the courage to choose herself? Please share your favorite Cameron moment in the comments below. If you enjoyed this deep dive, please hit like and subscribe to help us keep these Hollywood memories alive. Thanks for watching.